Greetings and welcome to this session of Roots 40 Plus. I am privileged yet again to welcome my friend, longtime spar, Dr. H. Patten, former member of Dance de l'Afrique and Ajido Pan-African Dance Ensemble, who is now a university lecturer. Welcome, H.
Thank you very much. And it's a privilege and a blessing to be here with you. And, we go back so far. And
Yes.
so it's almost like just sitting in and reasoning.
That's
but
right.
I don't know what I do still.
Yeah, it feels weird, isn't it? The fact that we're reasoning over this kind of technology, but it's necessary in today's time, isn't it?
That's right. Yes.
Well, this is another insight into your journey, your life as an artist. And so I'm going to start off by asking you, how did you get involved in dance?
Okay, well, I got involved in dance purely by accident. Because I was a visual artist, I was a painter, sculptor, and I remember that many years ago, and I don't think I've told many people this, many years ago when I finished I'd finished my O levels and A levels, and then I did technical illustration. So I did a course on technical illustration, and I would produce, some of the images you see when they're making a building, and they show you what the building's gonna look like and the people walking and things.
Sure.
I used to do the projection for that and do the rendering. So I used to produce those pictures.
Okay.
But I found it so boring, the technical side of it. I used to enjoy when I can now start paint it up and make it look real. And so I decided to change and go into fine arts. And I went on to a course, Art Education Studies. And I joined a political organization called Afro People's Organization, where we used to talk about the political things. It was connected to PACM, the Pan-African Congress Movement. And then we used to go to African Liberation Day every year, and we used to see Lanzel used to perform at ALD. And I never even considered dance. But then the leader of the group said, let's make up a little dance. And so we used Sata Masagana, the third world version, and we created a dance where it said, there is a line far away. And really we were miming out what it is to the music and try to join it up to make it into a dance. So that was my first set of performances. And then I went to university. I was supposed to go to America at the end of the year, and it was one of these Camp America things. And I said, no, man, I can't go on that, because I realized that the money they were going to give was little and nothing. And then it was far from where my relatives were. And I was going to use it as a cheap way to get to America to see the family and get across to Jamaica. And when I realized the money wasn't going to do that, I didn't go. And a friend told me about this African drumming class. And so I went to this drumming class, and it was Coco Beans who was teaching. And he used to say, well, to be a good dancer, to be a good musician, you have to be a good dancer too. So it would be good to learn some of the dances. So I went home and I practiced in the drumming and thing. And then a friend of mine, Roderick Cahoon, he said to me, well, why don't you come with me? There's a dance class that started, and it's running every Saturday. I said, man, I'm not interested. I don't have time for that, because it's coming up to my last year on the degree and thing, and I don't have time for that. But he convinced me to go. I went the first week. We went to the wrong place, because he didn't know the class had shifted to somewhere else for that week. And so I was vexed. I said, chap, you wasted the whole of the Saturday, and I'm going back again. But he convinced me to go again. And when I went, I remember I got there early, and Missy, this little Indian man, I pulled some rugs out of the way. And I looked at him and said, do you want a hand? And him said, no, you can't stand up there and watch me if you want.
He was pulling what? What was he pulling?
The mats, the
Okay,
mats
right,
that they
yeah,
do for gymnastics.
yeah.
And that was my first meeting with Bob Ramdani, feisty as he was from the same time. And so I joined in the class in the morning. I remember it was a Peruvian dance that we learned. And in the afternoon, it was George Ankra, who
Yeah,
came and taught Gahung. And so
right.
that was my very first introduction into the gahung. And when I did it, George and Bob said, "Boy, you look like a natural. You're a natural dancer." And Bob said, "Actually, next week I'm going to Ghana and I'm going to bring a man over here to teach dance. If you come to the classes, you'll learn so much from him." And so I went, and then he brought the man, Niate.
Ah,
And when Niate came, Ni looked at me and he said, "Give me 1 year and I'll make you a top dancer." Well,
right.
of course, I didn't have the time to give him the whole year, but we went to Ghana and I was there for 6 months. And within that 6 months, he turned me into one of the top dancers. And so
Amazing.
I'm always thankful for that. And Ni has
Amazing.
always been a mentor, a brother, a father, everything wrapped up in one for me within
Yeah,
African dance. And so that's how I got into the dance, purely
lovely.
by accident.
Yeah. I mean, what I realize is that we're talking and have the Roots 40 interviews have been with a lot of the pioneers. And George Ankara is definitely one of those people that I'll be interviewing as well. You
Yes.
are what I would describe as first generation Caribbean to experience these African arts. What do you think kind of pulled you towards Africa? I mean, you said you were part of the PACM and the People's Political Party, African
Yeah.
People's Political Party. So what was that pulled you towards the dance specifically?
Okay. Well, what happened was from I was young, I always like things about Africa. And I remember when I was young, I watched Roots. And
Hmm.
like at that time, I was the kind of rebellious type. Always I get into problem with the teachers because when they try to put you down, I would answer back and try stand up for myself. Because I
Yeah.
remember when as a child, as a little youth, I was about 8 years old, and the head teacher was a Thai. He used to come, and I think I was walking in the corridor at the time when we should have been out for break. I don't remember why. And then he called me over and told me I should be outside. And "You're a numbskull." And he knocked me on my head and said, "You're a numbskull. Repeat after me. What are you?" And then you have to say, "I'm a numbskull." But in my
Mm-mm.
brain, I was saying, "No, I'm not, and I'm going to show you." And
Yeah.
and so I always had that kind of rebellious thing. So when Roots came, I watched it, and it really affected me and made me think about how we have a work to do to free ourselves and things. I remember they told me that I'm a problem maker because somebody told them that I called them such and such. And I said, "What name did they tell you that I called them?"
Hmm.
I, and it was something like white so and so. I said, "Well, that person is lying, because if I was going to talk about them in a derogative way, have you ever watched a show called Roots? They told us the right name to call on her, Bob. So from the time they didn't say that I said Bob, you know that they're lying, because I would use the correct word, and they just told me to get out. And so
Yeah.
from there on, that political awakening was in me. And then I met a Nigerian brother who used to give me books to read and things. Then when I
Mm.
became part of PACM, PACM Afro People's Organization was about how we could use the arts as a way to politicize people and let people know about themselves. We
Yeah.
used to reasonings. People like Horace Campbell used to come over from Jamaica. And I remember Horace Campbell, he came and spoke with us when he came from Jamaica a number of times. But also, importantly, when he was called for the inauguration of Mugabe. And he went and he was part of the entourage and met up with Bob Marley and all of those, because
Wow.
Bob, he told us about how Bob electrified the whole stadium, Bob
Yes.
Marley.
Oh, yes. People talked about it to this.
Yes,
To yeah.
and he said that that in itself, Bob Marley's performance alone did so much to really champion the people. And when they spoke about it, why Bob Marley was invited was because his music of resistance is what people used to use when they were um, waging the war against apartheid, against the
Yeah.
struggles and things there. And
Yeah.
so I recognize that art is important, and
And
it's
very
the
powerful.
part
Yeah.
of us that enables us to survive. It's a survival mechanism.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Yes, I appreciate that. Okay, so what do you do now?
Well, I'm teaching at the university now. So I teach at Canterbury Christ Church University, where I used to teach theology and social justice, and also popular culture and theology, where in terms of the popular culture, I show how theology comes through with the different theological themes come through within popular culture. And when I'm talking about theology, I'm not talking just about Christianity. I'm talking about Rastafari. I'm talking about the traditional practices and how the influences of all of these things manifest within the popular culture that we have around us. And
Amazing.
my particular expertise was on Jamaican dancehall.
I
And so it
see.
was looking and asking the question whether there's a spiritual underpinning within Jamaican dancehall. But I
Right.
also teach African and Caribbean dance at Canterbury. And then I'm also working with Irie on the Irie degree course, where I teach the Caribbean dance for Irie.
Okay, amazing. Amazing. So I don't need to ask the next question. I was going to say, does your art form sustain you financially?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. The arts have always sustained me, and that's why my third born child,
Yeah.
Oniyomi, her name means creativity has saved us, and the reason why she got that name is because the arts have always sustained me. I used to
Wow.
work for the Commonwealth Institute extramural department, and then I worked for the Ames project, and then for music for change and music in detention. So I've always been able to use the arts to not only express the culture, but also to teach people about life through the arts. But on
Mm.
top of that, I've got my own companies. So, I have Patten Dance Theatre and
Mhm.
Coromantee Arts. And so I've done a number of productions. Since I left Ajido, then, on the Patten Dance Theatre, I did in the Wilderness, which was my first one-man production.
Yes,
With
I
them,
remember that.
yes, and that traveled from Africa to the Caribbean to Britain and showed how the movement of the arts changed, etc. And
Yeah.
then after that, I did a number of other independent productions. But then I was called. I don't know how they got my name to this day, but the British Council called me and asked me to do some work with the National Dance Company in Malawi, the Kwacha Cultural Troupe. And so I
Mhm.
choreographed, I think it was 4 productions in Malawi. I then got called to Zambia, and I worked in Zambia with the National Dance Company there and the university company. At that time, Dr. Umtonga was
Yeah.
alive, and he was the one heading that up. And so I worked with them there. And then later on, with the whole Africa 95 thing, where I was
Yes.
a dance officer for Africa 95, then I put together the Zim project, where I did the workshop, the Panes Move workshop in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, where I called together 32 dancers from 12 different countries, and we worked for the 10 days there looking at choreography, different approaches, etc. And this was the first time that there was ever a workshop of that type, where it looked at African choreography and different approaches to African choreography. And I remember as a result of that, Nee went back to Ghana, and that's when he started Noyam. You had Jackie, who went back to South Africa, and that's when he developed the whole Step Africa thing. And then you had Casimiro, who was from Mozambique. He went back there and later on became the director of the National Dance Company. Then went to Canada and started his own company. You had people like Gail and Ian, Gail who came to the workshop, and then she came back to the UK, and then later on Gail and Ian established ACE. And so you had Zemzim Booley, who went back to South Africa and developed the whole gumboots production that toured the world. So a lot of different things came from out of
that. Yes. Okay, so of all the projects that you've done, I would like to ask you, what are your most memorable moments? If you name maybe one or two, your most memorable moments in your career as an artist.
Well, one of the most satisfying things was that, you know, in Jamaica, I worked with Stella Morris, and I choreographed a number of pieces for Stella Morris Dance Ensemble. And I remember the first piece I choreographed was Dance Jollof. And with Dance Jollof, I had the opportunity to do a duet with Patsy Ricketts, who is Jamaica's top dancer. She trained in Jamaica and then went to America, worked with Dance Theatre of Harlem, and then came back and went to the top of her game. And so the opportunity to work with a superstar like that within dance, you know, that was really something for me. But then also, that was choreographed, I think, back in 1996. And, you know, they've been doing the show, that piece, over and over. And then I had the honor when I was there the last time where they were performing it. And it's actually, they talk about it as a classic. And I was thinking, wow.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. To be in a position where I have classic pieces outside. But that has never happened for me here in the UK.
That's what I was going to ask you, because the fact that you've got all these major projects that you've done in Africa, you've choreographed with national dance companies, and then to be recognized, one of your pieces to be recognized as a classic in Jamaica. Why do you think that the UK, and although, you know, people might be going, oh, Judith, that's obvious. Why do you think it is the case that, you know, you're not recognized in the UK in this way?
In the UK, I think it's a number of issues. For me, I always realize that in terms of African dance, when we speak about African dance, in the UK, people will talk about it as traditional dance. But when they say traditional dance, it's not just used as a descriptive term. It's used as a way of classifying it as being less than. Because you have ballet, which is classical dance, and then you have the contemporary dance, but then you have African dance is traditional. But the dances that we do that are traditional is really our classical dances.
Absolutely. And that's how I see it.
Yes, and that's why I say you can't class one as traditional and the other as classical. And you even in terms of the Arts Council budget, the lion's share goes towards keeping their classical dance. And then on the other hand, our classical dance,
I think it's referred. It's referred. It's kind of what's the word? When you put something back into, it's classed under folk forms. And so folk dancing as opposed to classical dancing. And I'd like to find out how they distinguish between the two. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry. The other thing is also, who makes that judgment?
Yes.
Who determines? And when you look at the dance forms that we do, on the one hand, they class ours as traditional and they class ballet as classical. But
Yeah.
classical ballet is really traditional Western dance.
Yes.
And our traditional African dances are really African classical dances.
That's
But
right.
because of the terms, it means one is treated as less than and the other one is elevated as the pinnacle. And
Yeah.
so that is something that has changed. But also, when you start to look at the dances themselves and the judgment that is placed on them,
Mm-hmm.
even within the university setting, anybody is expected to come. A ballet tutor can come and second mark for African dance,
Really.
but they will never call an African dancer to come and second mark for ballet because they
Right.
see ballet as specialist,
Right.
whereas African dance anybody can do that.
Can
And so
do.
it's about the respect. And
Yeah.
I think in terms of my career, um, I had a decision to make. Do I keep going to the Arts Council and the different funders and being led down the garden path? They'll talk to you in a way as if they're trying to guide you and help you to get through. And then at the last minute, they lead you up the garden path and then they close the door in the face. Say, sorry, you can't come in. And
Mm.
no funding. Close the door. We can't support you.
Right.
Did I stay and continue that road, or do I find other ways to get my work out there? And they wanted me home, whether it was home in Africa or the Caribbean. So that's where I made my
You
way,
went.
and
Yeah.
my work was well appreciated, and
Yeah.
also theorized in ways that it would never have happened here. I remember in when I was in Zambia, I choreographed one of the dances, and the dance was normally done in a circle, and I choreographed it so that they did it in circles, in lines, diagonals, etc. And then what Dr. Mtonga said to me is, "Wow, when they took it to the traditional location that the dance came from, and they performed it, the people went crazy because they were saying when it's done in a circle, you only have two relationships to concentrate on, and that's the relationship between the partner in front of you and the partner behind you. But all of a sudden, when it's broken out into lines and it's multiple lines, you have a partner in front, behind, either side of you, and diagonally to you. So
Mm-hmm.
they saw it as multiple conversations happening all at once. And so
Yeah.
even to understand the dance in those terms,
Yeah.
that's something that people over here wouldn't even start to consider.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if that's answered your question.
No, that's certainly. I mean, you've named the memorable moments, and we've talked, and I think it was very important that we acknowledge the fact that a lot of our artists tend to flourish outside of the UK, and the fact
Certainly.
that you were born here and grew up here and still had to take your practice somewhere else to receive recognition, that needs to be highlighted.
And sorry, can I just add another important thing? Why I realized I needed to take my work outside of this country was because I watched what happened to one of our great exponents, Peter Badijo. Peter
Mm,
Badijo came to this country already landed in terms of being an
well
academic thinker
recognized. Yeah.
and being a world recognized dancer and choreographer. And when
Hmm.
I saw how he was treated here, how hard, difficult it was for him to get funding, and how many times he had the door closed in his face,
Hmm.
I said to myself, well, if he, as an established academic, is having that problem, what will happen to us,
Yeah.
where people don't see us as being on the same level and as important as them?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I knew I had to find my
Get out.
audience elsewhere.
Yeah. Well done, though. Congratulations for that. And I'm hoping that now that this Black Lives Matter movement has come in and highlighted the fact that, we know we've been discriminated against for many, many years, but I think it's brought it to the fore now that there's an unequal platform, and it's for others to recognize that there's this unequal platform, not just black people and people that are suffering from it. So I'm hoping now that, that might change, the powers that be change their approach to black arts in future.
Well,
So
I'm hoping so because
yeah.
because there's things that really stand out in my mind in terms of my career, because I know I choreographed a whole section of the Queen's Golden Jubilee Parade down the mall,
Mm,
500 people.
mhm.
And I know that I was part of, I don't know if you remember when Mandela came over and
Yeah.
Ajita performed for him. And at that time, I'd just written my children's storybook and a Nancy book. And
Mhm.
it just so happened Mandela's wife was sitting in front of me. And I wrote wrote an inscription in the book. I said, to Madiba, the father of the nation.
Mhm.
I gave it to her and said to her, well, can she pass it to him? It's just for him to know that there are those of us out here who is thinking of home, who are thinking of home, I should say.
Mhm.
And I didn't expect it to happen, but as they came off stage and Mandela was doing a press call, and she went up to him and said something, and I saw her take the book and give it to him, and he
Oh.
said, who is the author of this? And I was quiet, but your sister, Barbara, was right behind me, and she said, see me here? And Mandela called and said, where's the photographer? Can you take a picture? And he
Oh.
asked for the picture to be taken with himself and myself. I never did receive that picture.
Oh
But for
wow.
him to even recognize me and
Yeah.
call me, and
Yeah.
then when he heard that I was the one, at that time I was acting artistic director for Ajido, because George Jukuno had gone on his research trip.
I see.
And then when he realized I was in charge of the dance, then he made such a big deal out of it. And then
Oh.
what crowned all of that was when I went to South Africa and I went to Durban and went to the King's Crawl there,
Yeah.
King Zwelithini, who is the direct ancestor of Shaka Zulu. And when I
Right.
went into the crawl, at that time my beard was black, and one of some of the his security just fell to the ground, and somebody started to chant, and I could tell straight away it was a praise singer chanting incantations. And I turned to Jackie Samela, who was alive at that time, rest in peace. And
Yeah.
I said to Jackie, what's going on? And he said, they think that you're the king of the sun because the son of the king, because you resemble one of the king's son, and with your beard and everything, you look like you should be a Zulu prince. And so
Oh
having things like that,
wow.
where I'm
Yeah.
recognized by
Yeah.
my own people, those are the things that are the pinnacle, and those are the things that we have to hold to
Yeah.
make everybody know that, to use the word that Charles Mills uses, the idea of somadification, the fact that
Somebody.
we are somebody of worth, we are
That's
not
right.
invisible, we
Oh.
are, and we are important.
Oh.
That is the thing.
And you see that though, you make me want to cry now because the story that you just said, well, earlier when we first started, that teacher that was conking you in your head and
Yeah,
telling you he's a numbskull, compared to when you reach home to Africa and they exalted you coming into that crowd. Look at the difference. Eh?
yes, yes.
And if that child took on that mantle, I'm a numbskull, I'm a numbskull, he would never reach to where you reach now. Because of your rebellious nature, you
Mhm.
ended up where you are, you
But
know.
then you see, thank you for saying that. But then I always think, and my heart always got out to all those other young people like myself who weren't rebellious enough
Yeah. Yeah.
who actually took that in and
Yeah.
subsumed that, and it held them back, who
Back.
never excelled. Many of the people I know never excelled until much later in life when
If
they
at
didn't.
all. Yeah.
Yes, but a lot of them, they had to find education for themselves on their
Yeah.
own terms because the
Yeah.
education system here kind of
Mm.
failed them and
Yeah.
made them feel like if they were not of
They
worth.
weren't worth anything.
And
Well, I mean,
dance has helped many of those people. I've
yeah.
seen many people who lack confidence, who totally changed and became somebody
Yeah.
of worth through dance.
So, that's a nice segue into my next question, which is, what advice would you give to aspiring artists? Something that you know now that you didn't know then, that you'd like to impart.
Okay. Well, the main thing I would say is if you have a love for something, you can't just have a love for it and like it. You
Mm,
have to have a passion for it. And
mm,
you have to then follow that passion. What my mother used to say, and she got it from my grandfather, what my grandfather used to say was, if you aim for the skies, if you fall short, you will land on the trees. So whatever you're doing in life, you have to have that passion that you aim for the sky. And if you fall short, you'll be on top of the trees, which is still higher than the highest place you can be when you're standing on the earth. Don't make
mm.
anything stop you. And if something does try to stop you, you work despite that.
That, yeah,
And you try
amazing.
to make sure that that will be the thing you can say. You tried to stop me, and despite that, I still succeed.
Yeah, like Maya Angelou says, and still I rise. You understand?
That's
You just
right.
keep going, keep going, keep going. Well, give thanks, Age. I mean, we've had all our technical problems, and I hope we iron them out before I can post this. But I am so grateful. And this, for me, is an insight. People are getting an insight into conversations that you and I have on a regular basis. You're my
Yes.
inspiration. A lot of the time when I hear the things that you've done, or you drop little anecdotes from old people used to say this and used to say that. So, I do miss those conversations. So plenty more now you finish your PhD. We can have more catch-ups.
Yes, most definitely. I just to leave a little proverb then, since you mentioned it. For young
Yeah.
people, remember, another same day leaf drop in a water rotten, which means it's not the same time that the leaf will fall in the water that it's going to spoil and disintegrate. So when we're doing anything, we have to always strive to do the best, because when we do it and we don't do it well,
Hmm.
we think we get away with it, but it will come back to bite us.
That's
But
right.
you can switch it around the other way and say, it's not all the great things you do that will be recognized one time. Over a
Hmm.
period of time, the little things that you do eventually will come together and people will recognize the greatness in you.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. Give thanks.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much. All right. Speak soon.
Take care. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.